Olá, Brasil! Estou aqui com John Forde, author de A Arte de Vender Ideias. It's a tremendous pleasure to be here with you, John, and thank you for taking the time to speak to Brazil about why you decided to bring A Arte de Vender Ideias here to Brazil instead of America, France, or any other country.
Hey, Rocky. It's great to see you again. Of course, we talk a lot, but I want to thank you for giving me this chance to say hi, hola, to everybody in Brazil. And the one other thing that I think is exciting about this is that a lot of people think that they need to study this that it takes 10 years, 20 years, or for me, it's been 3 decades of working in this industry, but to get to those levels. But what really happens is it can be one sales letter. It can be, just getting it right that one time can make all the difference. You can go in a year, take 9 swings at it, and 1 or 2 of them hit, and that can really change everything. So I think that that's what's in the book, and I know that that's what's in the book. And when people are in there and they find the thing that works for the situation they're in, I think that it's going to be really something special.
I agree. And could you tell me more? No, could you tell Brazil more about the type of secrets that are in this book, the kinds of ideas that you developed over your 30 years career? Are the ideas that you worked on in print 30 years ago, are they relevant for digital marketers today? If you were working in print before and you had to learn how to use email, how does that happen? How does that relate to Brazil in 2021?
Well, sure. I think that this is something really interesting too. And I was kind of lucky to straddle that time from working in print to moving to the internet and doing things online, and then even doing things online has transformed annually, or every 6 months it changes, because there are new technology and new apps and new venues, and people are getting smarter about using what's out there. So that part is fascinating, and it changes really fast. I think, though, one of the things that is difficult for people working today is that they get lost in some of the newfangled extras and gimmicks and things that people do online. And the people who really succeed in marketing today are ones who understand principles, not that are classic old principles, but really are timeless principles. So when I started out, there were certainly lots of classic books and ads and things like that. Some of them were, 50 years old, 100 years old. So one of the books we used to study, that read several times, was one that was written in the 1920s. But the principles that make things work over and over again prove to be things that are tied to how people work. And the inner psyche of people does not really change that much. So the secrets that are in the book are things about finding out how to read the person that you are writing to, so that you can talk to them in a way that they are ready to listen, that they're ready to trust you, and that you can make the connection that you need to make a sale. So I think really that is the key.
Speaking of your book, in my opinion, your last book, Great Leads, was really the voice of our generation of copywriters. And it transformed the careers of so many people and countless copywriters, the way that they think about starting their copy, the lead, which is so important because it generates so much of the overall results of each sales letter. What would you say is the primary difference between what you've learned between when you wrote Great Leads and changed the world with that book to now? What is the difference? What is grown and developed or become more advanced or sophisticated? How has your perspective about what works in copy changed since 2011, 10 years later, with the release of your newest book?
Well, I think it's actually more probably deepening of what I learned in the time since. So what Great Leads, the idea behind Great Leads is that we wanted to find a way to help a writer or a marketer get out of their own way, because there's so many choices to make when you sit down to sell something. And there's so many choices to make when you sit down to a blank page and you want to write something. So what we wanted to do was identify the things that have proven to work, so you can start there. And you can also look at the copy that you've written or the ideas that you have, and you can see whether they're still need shaping, or where they're ready. They're ready to roll them out. So in the time since, that was a sort of a foundation for the understanding that we took forward. And I've taught, and with my co-author on that book, we've taught those principles to, I can't even begin to count how many writers since then. And it's become the language of how they talk about copy when they sit down to write copy. But of course, once you've got the lead, which, as we established in that book, sets the pace for everything else that you're going to do, you then have to figure out how to write the rest of the promotion. And you have to figure out who you're talking to. There's still more work to be done. And I believe that what we've got in this new book talks a lot more about the rest of that work that needs to be done, and tries to keep the person on track so they get to the offer page and still have the same kind of momentum and the same strength to their message and the same kind of organized way of thinking and making things happen.
I'm gonna describe something that we use here. That what I felt most in your book was the fio dorado, the concept that begins with the lead, and you weave it through the entire sales letter until you get to the offer and the sale. And would you say that this fio dorado is maybe one of the biggest secrets of this book, starting with the lead, which you've already mastered and helped the entire world mastered, and creating the connection through the entire sales letter until the sale?
Well, I would say it's certainly one of the skills that you cannot get through a copywriting career without perfecting. The idea, and it's interesting that you felt like you might made a slip there mentioning the offer first, but actually that is one of the secrets as well, that somebody needs to figure out what it is that they have to offer and set that as a target to head toward. It's like telling a joke. You need to know what the punchline is before you start, or you're going to lose your way on the way to the punchline. So starting with an offer is one of the just one of the tips, I guess, that you would say to somebody, to figure out what it is that you're selling, and then see if that somehow informs the way you're going to shape your lead. But of course, there's a lot more to the lead than that. Figuring out who the audience is, for one, and where they reside when you write to them is going to help you set that up. But yes, in between that space, you have to be able to keep coming back to what it is that you want to say, what the sales message is. And there are ways to do that and to make that happen that don't have to be clunky or difficult, that can keep you on track. And that's the kind of thing that gets somebody to read your sales letter straight through from the front to the end, not dazzled by your writing, but dazzled by the thing that you're trying to sell, dazzled by the message and the product that you have to offer, which of course, that is the key to success.
Incredible. Not dazzled by your writing, but dazzled by the idea that you have to sell. It's a very powerful message. And I see a lot of copywriters that let their ego get in the way of that process that you described. It's amazing, because I know that you always have taught that we need to write in a way that the offer shines and the idea
Right.
that is presented. Speaking of offers, I wanted to hear what you, John, think about how, in addition to the book, in this particular once-in-a-lifetime instance, we are putting together an international intensive copywriting immersion in Rio, and you've decided to join us via video for live streaming. What would you say is the importance of this opportunity, this event, for the Brazilian copywriter to get these ideas and to put them into action?
Well, First of all, I want to I want to say thank you, obrigado, for giving me the chance to do that because I have yet to be able to make it down to Brazil. I do plan to get down there someday. I have been lucky enough in the past, in a few different years in the past, to work in private boot camps with some writers who came from Brazil to see me. And Rocky, you were there for I think for all of those. And it was fun for me to work with people who were excited about developing these skills and excited about applying them to businesses and doing it in a market where it's not a young market and it's not a mature market. It's this market that's in progress that is growing quickly, and you can see the results of what it is that we're doing happen quickly, and that's fun because you get to see the difference that you're making. So I guess for me, that is what's exciting about this being able to happen in Brazil because I get to see some of the results happening with the people who are coming. For the people who are there, as I understand from you, Rocky, that this is such an emerging industry, so fast paced that there are a lot of people who are really interested in it and passionate about it. And for me, as somebody who gets a chance to teach it, that's always exciting because you love to hear people who are excited about what it is you're talking about. But I think for people who are there to be around other people who care about these kinds of things and and to get a chance to talk to them and knock around those ideas that you have, those things that you're kind of developing in your head, and to hear them play out. Those opportunities are just golden because you can walk away from that kind of thing, developing the amount of ideas that would take you months, you can do in days. So I love going to events like that myself, even though I've been doing this for a long time. I get around my colleagues, I get around people who are students who are trying to figure things out, people who are business owners who are just curious and they come up with things. And uh, I'm always stunned that I walk away jotting down notes and things like that that I can use and learn from myself. So if that's the case for me, I'm sure that's going to be the case for anybody else who gets the chance to go to something like that.
I couldn't agree more. It accelerates everything. We're going to be talking about and teaching from the book principally, but in the interaction and making it real and live and setting that foundation for reading the book based on the ideas that we introduce and discuss in a way that they have never been discussed before, not only in Brazil but in the world. I think, I'm certain, is going to make a big difference for the guests that we're lucky to share this experience with. I wanted to ask you, we talk a lot about some of the businesses that you've worked with, that you saw start small and grow big. And I just wanted to hear what you think about your experience working with some of the best in the industry, some of our friends and colleagues like Bill and Mark, and there are so many. There are so many. And how Agora or Empiricus or some of the groups that we've worked with, that we've had a chance to help, like you mentioned, you've helped some of the Brazilian copywriters already. There's a part when we talked before that you said that not only do you know these secrets of copywriting, but you were there when they were actually created. The rules of the road that everyone follows now, you were there with the hammer, not putting the sign in the street. If you could just say anything about your experience in the foundations of copywriting, modern long sales form, long sales letter copywriting as we know it.
Yeah, well, you mentioned the sort of legends, and I talked a little bit about the classical legends of writing copy. I don't want to say old because some of them are people that are still writing copy today, and many of them are people whose books I studied and I read when I first started. Literally, I started out with a stack, and I worked my way through them. I had tapes and things like that I would listen to in the car or around the house, and I was lucky enough to come up in the industry and meet those people and become friends with many of them. and share a stage with them at other teaching events and boot camps and things like that, and correspond with them now. But then I was also lucky enough to start working with, you mentioned Bill Bonner and Mark Forde, whose name is similar to mine, not a relation. I was lucky enough not just to work with Bill or work with Mark, but both of them at the same time, as they mentored me to become a copywriter at the company Agora, which is maybe now very famous to people in Brazil, certainly famous in the US because it has become a copywriting marketing giant and a standard for the industry. When I started out, there were no staff copywriters working at Agora. The only staff copywriter was Bill himself, who did write all the copy, and he needed somebody to start taking on other projects, and that became me. So he started to train me, and then Mark Forde came along, and he was helping to develop other things in the business and also to train copywriters because he had been a copywriter. So between the two of them, they had all kinds of teaching they wanted to do and only one student, but then no idea how to train him. So we sat in meetings together and we came up with rules and steps and things like that that they reverse engineered out of the things that they were doing that worked. And we codified them, and then we hired other copywriters and we started to train them. And that training spilled out on, and those writers trained other writers, and now Agora has a phenomenal, maybe uncountable number of copywriters, I'm not sure. But the things that we would teach internally to those writers were things that we wrote out in long form and would teach in multi-hour boot camps and multi-day boot camps, also which you and I have participated in Rocky together. And a lot of those things, I'm surprised now sometimes to see those steps and also things that I've written about in my e-letter show up in trainings where I don't know any of the people there. But they're talking about conversations that we had in a closed room. So, and I think that that's great. The copywriting community is a very sharing community and a very friendly one, in my opinion, where I think that you get writers who learn to get past the ego that gets in the way when people start writing, and they just want to make it better. And sharing those secrets is a key part of making that work.
Speaking of secrets and history and the evolution of copywriting in America, in the world, which you know as an international citizen, you've lived all over. And I believe that even now, I mean, you're speaking from Europe and you're going to Baltimore, you're going to the US, Sunday this week. You've seen the markets and you've seen them grow. And the reason I've been so excited to bring you, one of the world's most renowned experts in copywriting, to Brazil, and to Brazil first, is because for most of my time, it's been a younger market, a maturing market. But I can see all the signs because I've seen them in the US and I've seen them in other countries, that it's rapidly becoming a mature market. And what happens in these more advanced, more mature markets is that they require more sophisticated copy ideas. And when we decided to work together to promote this, one of the ideas that was important in presenting this opportunity, I called the copywriter of tomorrow. Because what's worked in the past in Brazil, the simple ideas, maybe fear and greed-driven copy, and what's working in the present, maybe exploring other more mechanisms, unique mechanisms, and what will work in the future are very different things, are very different aspects of copy as the market matures. And I just wanted to ask you if maybe you could share your view on this idea of the copywriter of tomorrow and why it's important for a Brazilian copywriter, the person watching this video right now, Você, to get access to this book, this immersion right now before anyone else, and to know the ideas of tomorrow for today. What would you say about that?
Well, I think what I would say is that things change and things stay the same. The things that stay the same, we already talked about, that people are always going to be the same internally. They're going to have the same things that they care about. They're going to have the same desires, hopes, and dreams. But the market does change and the market does become more sophisticated, and the ways to reach that market become more sophisticated. So when you look at a young market in Brazil, that market, when it was much younger, it was much easier to write something and to execute it okay, and it would work to that audience because the audience hadn't seen very much. So it was new and it was interesting. But as you train your writers, you train your market as well, and they become more sophisticated. So you need to be able to write to that market at a level where they are, not where they were. And if you want to be on the leading edge, you have to write to that leading edge of where they are, maybe even to where they aren't quite yet, so that just enough so that you can pull them forward. So I think that part of really what the tomorrow is the copywriter of tomorrow is writing to the customer of tomorrow. I also think that you'll find that you're competing against other companies that are becoming more sophisticated, and you're competing against other writers who are becoming more sophisticated. So you need to learn, many of the principles that you need to learn are still the same timeless principles, but you need to understand them better than you ever did before. It's a little bit like being a basketball player. On a court, you might go out on that court or let's say a football player, since that's probably more at home with Brazil, in a schoolyard playing football. You can play just at the same level as all the other kids, but when you want to take it to the big leagues, you have to play at the professional level or you'll get crushed. So this is about understanding those same timeless principles. And it's the same game. The pros are in the schoolyard, you're kicking the ball, but the pros know how to do it better. So what you're trying to do is understand those same principles, but elevate them so that you can execute them much better and much faster so that you can stay ahead of everybody else. That, I think, is what you're trying to get out of this book and out of this kind of training.
That was the absolute best analogy I've ever heard. If anyone was unsure about why you are a copywriting legend, I think that just became very clear. So I think we have two more steps. First, I'm going to ask you to deliver a message directly to the Brazilian copywriter, Você,
Okay.
and what they need to do and the benefit they're going to get. Maybe they're earning 3,000 reais if they're a junior copywriter, or 7,000 or 9,000 reais if they're a senior copywriter, but they should be earning 300,000 reais with royalties and commissions, or as the owner of their own business, or 900,000 reais per month. Those are all people I know. Those are all reasonable expectations. So, John, what would you say is your message to the Brazilian copywriter? You're looking right in the camera, but it could be a Roberto Aki right across the camera from you, or a Fernando or a Giuliano. And what would you tell them is the most important thing for them to do right now in their career if they're earning 3,000 reais as a junior copywriter, or 7,000 reais as a senior copywriter? What would you say to him or her? Por favor. Imagine a Giuliano sitting here in front of you, or a Claudia, or an Elena. What would you say to that copywriter?
What would I say to you, to both say, about copywriting? Copywriting as a career, as a skill, as an adjunct to your business is a gift, because this is one of the very few skills that you are going to be able to use almost no matter what it is that you do. Even if you leave copywriting, you'll never stop thinking like a copywriter. You'll never stop trying to understand what it is that that person that you're writing to needs to hear and what they need to trust you so that you can transmit a message to them. So already you're way ahead of the game in having gotten started in doing that. But if you want to sustain that, if you want to grow that opportunity, then my message to Você would be get better. Get better at it and figure out what it is that makes copy perform and gives you the advantage and makes it not just more effective, but also easier to do and something that you can do naturally. That, I think, really is the goal of what is in the book and the other things that have come with the book and in the intensive, is to perfect that ability so that you can do it like a master, so that you don't actually at some point you don't think about those multiple steps and multiple tips because they can become ingrained, but you have to get there. And to do that, you have to participate in this level. So when you look at somebody who is making 300,000 AIs or 900,000 AIs a month writing copy, they're not that much different from you. They weren't born geniuses or smarter or anything else. What they did was figure out the thing that made that difference. And maybe they just did it once or twice or 3 or 4 times. And by doing that, they transformed everything. They have the same doubts that you probably have. They have the same moments where they're frustrated and trying to figure things out. But these skills that we're talking about gaining here are the things that get them past it, whereas they might stop somebody else who doesn't have those same skills. I think that that's what I would say, that you need to perfect those skills. You need to understand them better, and you will get better once you have them under your belt.
We talked about me writing a letter to Brazil, to the copywriters and the business builders, the entrepreneurs here, and I wrote this letter, and you read the letter, and it's right here beneath this video. What would you say is the reason to read this letter? If you were a copywriter working here in Brazil, maybe starting out, maybe you have a few years of experience, and you want to be the best, what is your advice about the letter I'm trying to share with Brazil below?
Look, I think what it comes down to is this. Rocky wrote a letter down below that describes everything that we have talked about and worked over and tailored for the Brazilian market over the last many months. And I know that the principles, the ideas that are there, are ideas that work. I have seen them transform businesses, and I have seen them transform the lives of the people who use those ideas in their own careers to double, triple their income, and their standing with their companies, and to build their own careers as freelancers. People use these ideas all the time, and I know that these ideas can work because I've seen them work, and I know that they can work for the Brazilian market because Rocky has worked so hard to tailor them for what he knows that is down there in that market, and also because, as I mentioned before, I have worked with some Brazilian copywriters, and I've seen them be very successful for them. So what I'm hoping is that you will look down at the letter below, read through it. You might find the one thing that transforms your own career, transforms your own business. And all you have to do is look down below, see if it's there.
John, it's like I said in the beginning, it's a tremendous pleasure to work with you, to know you, for you to be a part of my life and my career. And I can't thank you enough for the time that you have shared with me. Thank you for the time you've shared with Brazil, the Brazilian copywriter, the Brazilian entrepreneur. Thank you even more for the timeless gift that you've created, the art of selling ideas that it's going to not only change this viewer's life, my life, but I firmly believe that this book will change the lives of generations of Brazilians and the fortunes of generations of Brazilian businesses, and how copywriting in Brazil moves and enhances its reputation on the world stage. And you've been so generous with your time, so generous with your ideas, and even more generous with Brazil, allowing me, agreeing with me to produce this book, to publish this book here in Brazil in 2020. Para você, o copywriter brasileiro. Thank you, John.
Obrigado.